Hey there guys, so out of sheer curiosity, I wanted to try out GTA 4, but I didn't want to just play out the normal game. I wanted to see if we can actually install the visual enhancement mods that are pretty popular that you'll see all the time on YouTube, people trying out. Certainly the game itself wasn't exactly the most optimized game when it came out, and even to this day, it is still surprisingly demanding, and it's not necessarily because it's a beautiful looking game or anything like that. Visually speaking, it definitely looks like a game that's 15 years old now, but it is one of those things where it's such a classic game, and I was just curious to see if we could actually install some visual mods on here to make this almost 2-decade-old game look a little bit more modern. Now you're looking at the game currently running with a mix of high and very high settings, and the level of performance that we're getting, at least in terms of averages, before we do any modding whatsoever, at least looks pretty decent. We are at the full 1080p resolution. But I want to try out the Ice Enhancer 3.0 natural mod. Now this is one of the most popular visual mods for the game itself, so we're going to take a look at what exactly the performance is like and what I had to do to get this to perform anywhere near decently. And here we have the game now running with the mod installed, and you can see a pretty drastic difference in terms of the visuals, but also in terms of performance. Now we had to do quite a bit to get this to perform anywhere near this level. What you're looking at right now is the game actually running at 720p, but with the lossless upscaling tool used with FSR to boost this up to 1080p. Now visually speaking, it is a pretty drastic improvement over where we were at before, but there are some issues presented here. For one, we are now getting a below 60 FPS average, but it is at least staying at around above 30 FPS, most of the time being in the 40s, but in really intense situations, it will tend to drop from there. But in general, it is surprisingly playable. That being said though, there are certain graphical glitches that become apparent here, and I'm not 100% sure what the issue with them is. At first I thought that I had messed something up while installing the mod, but after doing everything possible and reinstalling it again, and even looking into specifically what the developers on the page itself for the mod, which is linked down below by the way, what I found at least was that this is just exactly how it's supposed to be. And I think one of the problems might actually just end up being the fact that we're running this with essentially virtual RAM, in the sense that it's just using system RAM instead of any kind of dedicated RAM. So we get a lot of hop-in and texture issues. I'm not 100% sure if that's exactly what the issue is. That's just my assumption here, but it was something that was happening pretty frequently. Now I also had to downgrade the game all the way down to a much older version because the more recent versions of the game are pretty much incompatible with most visual mods. But in general, the overall experience was really surprising. I was genuinely expecting this to be kind of a failure, just because I remember trying to actually mod this game on my PC at this point a decade ago, which is really disgusting to me just to say because it makes me feel really old. But in general, the level of performance that we're getting out of this is it's shocking, really. I remember trying a visual mod like this when I was a kid, and in general the performance was abysmal. So being able to do that now with a mini PC that has no graphics card is pretty surprising. But again, we do have visual issues here and there. So would I recommend actually playing the game like this? No, not really. I think it's a little just too demanding for this system. Even modern systems tend to struggle with this game just because of the fact that the way that it is developed, it was just such a horrible port. And you do also have to downgrade the game to a previous version, and if you want the best visual experience, they recommend that you go to the oldest version that the downgrading tool actually supports, and then you don't get access to the DLC. So if you're using the version that comes with the Ballad of Gay Tony and the Lost and the Damned, you do miss out on what I consider to be the best story missions in GTA 4. But in general, it was just a fun experiment to try this out on here. In a lot of ways, it does start to look a lot like GTA 5, but that actually got me curious to try out some visual enhancement mods in GTA 5. Now, it's a game that runs better on this hardware than this in a lot of situations, just because it is a far better, more optimized engine. So I'd be curious to see how visual enhancement mods work on that. If you're interested in seeing that, be sure to leave a comment about that down below. Let me know if you're interested in that. If you found this video interesting or entertaining or useful, let me know down below. I will be linking down to the mods down below, and if you're curious on how to install these, I'll even link down the video that I used as a guide on how to install all this. It was certainly fun to look at a game that I grew up playing. This was actually one of the first games that I got on the PlayStation 3 when I got that. Back then, I was using a CRT TV. My family still still hadn't even moved over to having flat screen TVs. And it was actually what caused me to finally get a flat screen TV. It was an old LG TV that I think was only 720p. It was like a 30-inch TV that we got for extremely cheap. But playing this on a CRT, the original version of the game, was pretty much impossible because the game originally is just so dark, so gray, and just so bland that on a CRT TV, it looked absolutely brutal. You could hardly see the detail on anything. So finally switching over to HDMI was revolutionary, even if at the time the game itself was running at a much lower than 720p resolution. So being able to see it look so vibrant and so detailed today is really, really impressive to me, and I'm having a lot of fun looking at this, but I just really would not recommend playing like this. Specifically because if you start driving around, you'll start to notice a lot of texture pop in and things start to really freak out in the distance. But if you are curious to try it out yourself, it is a relatively easy install. And again, I did link down below the guide that I used for it. If you want to try it out on your system yourself, maybe you'll get some less pop in than I did here, or maybe you're just completely curious. It is at least a free mod to download, and it won't take up all your time doing it. So anyways, I hope you found this interesting, useful, or entertaining. If you did, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.